Welcome to the Paul Has Fun podcast. I'm Paul, and on this podcast, I dig into my hobbies. I also document my life and interests. Thank you so much for spending time with me. Welcome back to the podcast. If you've heard the podcast before, this is your first time, welcome on in. Happy to have you here, absolutely. And in this episode, I'm going to be talking about two comic book recommendations of books that I've read this year of 2023. There are some spoilers for each of these comics when I'm going ahead and discussing my recommendations here. Not full-on spoilers, but there are some here and there. Just wanted to give you that up ahead. So the first comic that I wanted to go ahead and recommend is Layla Starr, The Many Deaths of Layla Starr, which was published in 2021. As always, I read all of my comics on Comixology. Great app. So many comic book recommendations. As I mentioned in the past, they don't always have the newest stuff, but there's these collections of books, whole stories, whole series. It's kind of like you're binging on the whole story, like you would a Netflix show or something like that. This comic is published by Boom Comics. The synopsis here on Comixology, it says, humanity is on the verge of discovering immortality, and as a result, the avatar of death is cast down to Earth to live a mortal life in Mumbai as a 20-something Layla Starr. Struggling with her newfound mortality, Layla has found a way to be placed in this time and place where the creator of immortality will be born. Will Layla take her chance to stop mankind from permanently altering the life cycle? Or will death really become a thing of the past? A powerful new graphic novel, not so new anymore, from award-winning writer Ram V, who wrote titles such as These Savage Shores, I've never heard of that, and Swamp Thing, and Felipe Andrade, who's drawn Captain Marvel before. This story explores the fine line between living and dying through the lens of magical realism, and it collects the whole story of Layla Starr, issues 1 through 5. Now, some of my thoughts on this comic. I found it first through a 2021 best of list, specifically IGN's big gaming website, but they also do movie and comic book reviews and all other kind of good stuff. And in this book, I like the art style. These tall, lanky characters, they look kind of strange. They look weird. It was different and unorthodox from popular superhero comic book styles of art, But the story flowed and I never felt lost. Sometimes that's a complaint that I have with certain comic books where from panel to panel, the story flow is a little weird or just like completely jumps to something else. I was reading the Jamie Reyes Blue Beetle graphic novel recently. That was on Comixology. I liked the art, but the way the story kind of jumped around, I got lost and I didn't find it very intriguing and I dropped it. I just stopped reading it. I just, saw the Blue Beetle movie, loved that, and read this story, and like I said, it just wasn't, I wanted to read a comic book of Blue Beetle, Jamie Reyes, and it wasn't vibing with me, and the story panel with the art, just like, it jumped around, wasn't working for me. Getting back to Layla Starr, like I said, the flow of the artwork and the panels and the story, I followed it, and I could understand it. It's a fun adventure. As the main character, Layla Starr, she meets crows and ghosts and temples that talk to her because she's death, right? But in the body of this young woman, but she can see and feel different things that other normal humans or muggles, if you're doing Harry Potter fame, can't understand. And she's drawing lessons from them, lessons about life. And I thought that was very cool. As the synopsis of the story mentioned, that her goal is to stop the person who's going to create immortality. And opportunities, they present themselves throughout the story for her to do that. But she keeps getting killed and keeps getting reincarnated. And every time that she is reincarnated, like I mentioned, there are a few spoilers in this, not full-on spoilers. Every time that she dies and is reincarnated as Layla Starr, and I'm talking about death on this earth mortal plane, it's years further into the life of the person who creates immortality. So when she first encounters this person who creates immortality, she encounters as a baby, this man, and then she dies, and then when she's reincarnated, he's like 7 or 8 years old, and this continues until the man is like a senior and until he goes into his old age. I found the story to be sincere. It shared lessons of gratitude, to be alive, and to spend time with loved ones, and to stop making excuses because you're too busy to do so, which is something that I'm sure all of us, I know myself, am guilty of. And this is a nice change of pace, this story, from the negative news, content that I consume a lot. Is content where it's kind of criticizing big franchises like and I enjoy that content. I'm not attacking this negative content, but reading a story like this, which is a nice change of pace, and it's uplifting. Like I've said many times in this podcast, you are what you consume, not only in food, but with your eyes, with your ears. And it's nice to get a steady stream of positivity. I try to make it a habit. I'm working on trying to make this a habit where maybe 4 or 5 days of the week, I listen to at least 10 minutes or 15 minutes of self-help podcasts or things about positivity, just to feed myself positive things and not just be overall consumed with negative news from the news broadcasts, or like coworkers or family members or friends complaining about something, or watching YouTube content or movies and TV about like death and things getting destroyed, and just a little steady stream of positivity, right? And I was also reminded of this from listening to a recent Gary Vaynerchuk podcast, where he talked about wanting more good things in the world, and this graphic novel, it reminds me of that. Now moving on to the next comic book recommendation, which is DC Comics' Doomsday Clock. This is the synopsis on Comixology. The story you thought you'd never see, now collected in one volume. The world of Watchmen collides with the DC Universe, as presented by master storytellers Geoff Johns and Gary Frank, who've worked on Shazam, Origins, Batman Earth 1. Geoff Johns famously wrote the Flashpoint storyline that the Flash movie is based on, and has a fantastic DC animated movie. If anything, those DC animated movies, so many of them are fantastic. The most recent ones that I've watched, one right now that's on HBO Max as of this recording, which I haven't finished yet, but is Justice League Warworld, and also one that I watched just last night, I finished watching it, was Super Sons, or Batman with Damian Wayne, Superman, and Jonathan Kent. So that was great, and there's too many to name on this podcast of the animated DC movies, which a lot of them are available on HBO Max. But now continuing with this description for this comic book, it's 7 years after the events of Watchmen, and Adrian Veidt, I'm saying that wrong, I'm sure, Ozymandias in the comics, has been exposed as the murderer of millions. Now a fugitive, he has come up with a new plan to redeem himself in the eyes of the world. The first step, finding Dr. Manhattan, the blue glowing guy from Watchmen, alongside a new Rorschach, I'm telling you, I'm butchering these names, and the deadly duo of Mime and Marionette. He follows Manhattan's trail into the DC Universe, which is on the brink of collapse as international tensions push the Doomsday Clock ever closer to midnight. Is this all Dr. Manhattan's doing? This collects the entire Doomsday Clock series, issues 1 through 12. Now, this comic book, this story, is in a direct sequel to the 1980s Watchmen comic. Or have you seen the Watchmen movie? This is a direct sequel to that. Not so much the HBO Max TV show, which is a great show, by the way. You should watch it if you're a fan of the Watchmen. But this is like a continuation. This particular story is a continuation of that, and it includes DC Comics characters. I was excited to read this because I am a fan of the movies. I'm a fan of that Watchmen story, and I'm a fan of the Watchmen movie, the Watchmen TV show. So I'm a fan of the Watchmen. So I was really looking forward to reading this. That book originally was published in 1987. The Zack Snyder movie came out in 2009, and the HBO show came out in 2019. This particular story was published in 2020, October 2020, so it's about 3 years old now. Now, the artwork is sharp and super clean, and it's done by Gary Frank. And as I mentioned, Geoff Johns is the writer. Other stuff that he's written has also been Blackest Night and The Sinestro Corpse War, two other books that I've read through Comixology, and both fun, great, action-packed stories. The story was easy to follow, but it was complex and had several twists and turns. I enjoyed the Watchmen characters interacting with the DC Comics characters, like Ozymandias and Lex Luthor. It's almost like parallels of each other, right? Superman and Dr. Manhattan, Mime and Marionette, they interact with the Joker as well. And the twists and turns really revolve around Dr. Manhattan and changing the DC universe, where the Justice Society of America back in the 1940s, this is like the initial Flash, where he has a kind of like that suit bowl kind of helmet, the Green Lantern that has like a cape kind of thing. These characters, just to give you an idea, in this story of Doomsday Clock, Dr. Manhattan, he changes DC Universe history by making it so that they don't exist, which I found that very interesting. And there's like a bunch of ramifications that come from that affect this current modern day DC universe. Another major twist, this is very much in the third act, and once again there are spoilers here, when it comes to Superman, that Superman in the metaverse and in the multiverse, and through these Infinite Crisis stories which are mentioned in this book. So it includes all these other DC events that have happened in DC's past in this Doomsday Clock book, as you see Dr. Manhattan kind of altering and changing things. Changing DC history, where the constant is always Superman in all these different universes, and all these different, the metaverse and the multiverse. Superman is always the constant, and him being the constant is where hope springs from that. Hope that the good guys will win and the bad guys will be defeated. And all the other inspiration that comes from Superman, the other heroes that are kind of born from that. And I found that to be fascinating. I don't know if I'm explaining it very well, but this is one of the big revelations of the book, and I found that to be super cool. It even includes like the New 52, the Rebirth. Like these are like kind of reset points for the DC universe, where you get these different kinds of heroes. I mean, the same ones, but different costumes. And it includes all this to say that Superman is always the constant in all these universes, and all these multiverses, metaverses. Just revisiting these characters from the Watchmen. I always am fascinated by Dr. Manhattan. The comics, from the Watchmen to even now, this Doomsday Clock, I think even more so, it sells it so well, where the way Dr. Manhattan views time is like if he's looking at you, like he could see the time that's happening right now, but he just simply looks left, and then he's seeing his past. Or he could simply look right, and then he sees what happened 10 minutes ago, what's going to happen 10 minutes from now. It's fascinating the way his character is written into this. Now, other books that I've really enjoyed, I would say, other comic books that I've really enjoyed, I would say, man, I can't wait to see if they ever make this a movie. I don't think this would work as a live-action movie, but as an animated movie, as, like I said, a sequel to the Watchmen story, I think this would be fascinating, and I would totally be down to watch that. So those are the two comics that I wanted to go ahead and recommend to you. Like I said, the first one being The Many Deaths of Layla Starr, great book. The second being DC Comics Doomsday Clock. Both on Comixology, or you can buy them through Amazon. I'm going to go ahead and leave affiliate links in the description, in the show notes for this episode. And if you've read these books or plan to, please let me know. As always, you could comment on this episode at paulhasfun.com. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and I will catch you on the next one.